What's up, listener? This is episode 127 of the Jock and Nerd podcast. Thanks for pressing play. This episode is part of our Small Timber celebration in collaboration with our friends over at A Place to Hang Your Cape, an awesome geek comic book website. They love supporting the independent press, the small press, and thanks to them, we have a great guest on this episode. You're going to get to meet comic book creator Brett Uren. Remember how to pronounce that last name, listener, because I screw it up pretty quickly. Yeah, you'll hear that in a moment, like right at the top. I'm an ass. Brett is the creator of a great indie comic called Torso Bear that's getting a lot of buzz over in the UK indie comic scene. Check out the show notes at jockandnerd.com/127 for links to his work, his Kickstarter. It's very important. Support the arts, support the Kickstarter. Let's get to it. It's the Jock and Nerd podcast with your hosts, Anthony and Imran. Jock and Nerd. Hey, friend, how's it going? Welcome to the show. My name is Imran.
My name's Anthony.
He's the Jock.
He's the nerd.
And this is the Jock and Nerd podcast. We got a great guest on the show today. Someone our buddy David Malofsky from A Place to Hang Your Cape has been trying to hook us up with for like a year. And we finally connected with the creator of Torso Bear, Brett Uren, all the way from... Wait, I said his name wrong.
You said his name wrong, you asshole. It's Brett Uren. Not Brett Uren,
I can't.
You dick.
I have to redo that. Brett Uren.
No, you don't have to read. No, we'll edit that in post. No, we're not. We're not editing that in post. Leave it the way it is.
And I asked him 5 times. I asked him 5 times how to say his name. I knew he was going to fuck it up. But
yeah, you really did fuck it up.
Look, he told us
Uren.
He gets that. Yeah, you know, when you have a name such as Uren, you're going to get the unfortunate urine jokes. So Brett,
usually that's from like the asshole, not from the guy that's supposed to be the nerd that like sympathizes with people and is actually really nice.
Look, my name is Imran. Nobody ever gets it right. I don't give a fuck. So
you have a track record of just being like the nice guy that fucks things up.
Right.
From the urine comment just now to you breaking that toy at G-Fest. Hey, Imran, keep the nice guy act up because you're an asshole.
Delicious audio. This is delicious, awkward audio. Brett, so how do you say his last name, Anthony?
Uren.
Brett Uren, who's the creator, publisher of this awesome independent comic book called Torso Bear.
We should give a shout out to the Small Press September because this is why we're doing it.
And that's why we have him. Happy Small Timber, everyone. It's a little thing A Place to Hang Your Cape is doing in the month of September. Where
network we're on.
The network we are on, where it's celebrating small publishers, small press books, and then small heroes like child heroes and then shrinking heroes like
so ap2hyc.com is where you want to check all of this out.
Definitely. And then check out the show notes for this episode for all the links to everything we talked about with Brett, who's really cool. And we had a great conversation. Let's say we just get to that right now, Anthony.
Why don't we?
The Jock and Nerd podcast. Brett Uren, thank you so much for joining us all the way from the United Kingdom. How's it going?
Oh, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on the show. The kingdom's not quite so united, but you guys seem to have been talking about that quite a lot.
Which part of the kingdom are you in?
About 30 miles away from London, in Buckinghamshire, a little town called Aylesbury. It's a small market town in the country that thinks it's Neasden in London. So there's a bunch of kind of wise guys walking around in their sports gear thinking they're gangster, but going into a small Summerfield supermarket in the fresh veg section. Yeah, it's weird.
They think they're big city guys.
I know exactly where that is, Brett. I know exactly where.
Oh, okay. You've heard it too. Everyone who seems to leave there ends up coming back, and they come and say, "Oh, right, I haven't seen you in ages. So where have you been? I've been to Australia. So what are you doing back in Aylesbury? I have no idea."
You were born there?
No. I was born in Hammersmith in London, and then moved down to a little village called Winslow, where there's more Masons and Masonic lodges per square mile there than I think I've ever seen in any kind of particular place. It's weird.
Ooh, that's where the Masons come from. Look, I'm glad we finally got you on the show because our buddy David Malofsky, from A Place to Hang Your Cape for like a year, he's been like, you got to check out Torso Bear. Get Brett on the show. You'll love him. And this Torso Bear, your book that you created, seems to be a little bit of a hit of the UK indie comic scene over there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I wouldn't say a hit. Certainly creators and critics seem to love it a lot. If anything, the driving force between the book continuing has mainly been creators coming back and going, I've got this idea for a story. And inevitably they tell me, and it's fucking cool, so we have to do it. And that's why we've ended up with 3 books, just because people keep having fucking cool ideas.
So let's start with, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Torso Bear is?
It was a drunken joke. So
oh, really?
We were pub, and I was probably about 7-8 pints deep, and because I'd done nothing but horror books up until that point, people were like, come on, you're getting older. And I'm like, oh, fucking thanks, but you've got to lighten up a bit. Why don't you try doing children's books? Oh yeah, you want me to do children's books? I'll do the most messed up children's book possible. And with that in mind, I did a little short 8-page story for a Norwegian anthology called Otra, with the help of Glenn Moan, who went on to be the co-editor with me on Torso Bear, and we sort of just crafted this little 8-page thing that was supposed to be, it was a joke. And every time we've gone to do a new book, it's been kind of, there's no way we can get away with more of this, right? And we have so far.
Yeah, I read that on the PDF. I'll put a link in the show notes for the listener if you want to check out the 8-page kind of first story. And you know what? There's a lot. It was really clever. There's a lot of really clever ideas in this
right away
world.
when the piñata starts puking.
That's great. Even before then, like it's raining lemonade, and the guys they talk. I like how they talk about I'll cup and string this in as how he communicates back to the station, and there's shoestrings instead of police tape. And it's like Serpico meets fucking Toy Story or something.
We've been toying with the tagline that it would be Toy Story meets True Detective or fucking something like that. Yeah, and that was the idea. To kind of like, my first graphic novel was, I went way out there. Like, I was going to be like the Lynch of comics and make this deeply layered fucking thing that people were going to take apart and analyze years down the line in my young, arrogant head. And so when it came to making something a bit more palatable for readers, it was kind of like, well, everyone does a genre mashup, but what if I actually do that, like, in the most extreme way possible? And that gritty but keeping it storybook mentality seems to have just sort of run. It was a complete accident.
It's a great disturbing juxtaposition, because the main character, Ruxby, who's he just has this really innocent, smiley look on his face all the time, and then there's just like violent toy crime scenes.
It kind of reminds me. Have you seen Ted?
Yeah, totally seen Ted.
Ted, was this before or after Ted?
Do you know what? I think it was about that sort of time. And
time.
really weird thing is that came up with the Torso Bear idea, and then Ted came out, and then there've been a couple of other guys in the UK indie comics scene. As a mate of mine, Andy Clift, came up with a teddy bear who's Indiana Jones fighting vampires called Bertie Bear. And then there's another guy who did like a book called Zombie Bears, and it was like, where the fuck have all these bear books come from all of a sudden?
Bears have been very popular all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's sodding weird, but it's weird to be riding a sort of vague crest of an idea that people have come to from different points. You take something nice and innocent and kind of do something a bit twisted with it, but then
I like to go with tainted.
Yeah, tainted.
just because I like the word taint.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Anthony just wants to say taint.
Taint one thing or another, yeah.
Well, you said earlier about dark children's books. Like, I've always been, because I'm an illustrator, I've always wanted to work in children's books, but I've always been attracted to like taking these Grimm's fairy tales, which are actually like really disturbing stories. If you read, they really hated Hansel. Like, they fucking tried to kill Hansel in every story. And I'm like, this is for kids? And then you see how like Disney kind of waters it down. And now everybody thinks Disney wrote all these goddamn stories, when they didn't, they just kind of co-opted them. And the original stories many times are a little more disturbing. Like children's stories always had like a death in them.
Yeah, well, there's some bits that are about sexual awakening as well. The whole idea with Sleeping Beauty is that it was supposed to be, I mean, it was a mistranslation from glass slipper because it was there instead of fair in French or something, I think, and it was supposed to be a furry slipper. Do you get where I'm going with this?
Furry. Oh, she's coming into puberty kind of thing. Holy shit!
Oh shit!
Yeah, I'd see. Show me that version. Why have you got to water it down for us?
You do. Disney have got a lot to answer for. We haven't had a vague run-in with Disney, but when we put up the first volume for Comixology, there's a story in there where one panel for 1 second shows sort of a vague approximation of Darth Vader's mask that we had to go in and digitally remove later on because they didn't give a shit about the He-Man alikes. They didn't give a shit about the Lego characters. But at Comixology were like, come on, Disney own Star Wars now. We don't want to go up against them. Can you just remove this and it'll be fine and they'll pass the law?
Dude, you don't fuck with Disney legal. They'll sue the shit out of you for way less.
As soon as I got that request in, I was like, okay, yeah, we better fucking watch out and change it up real quick.
Luckily, there's lots of other properties to fuck with in the world of toys. Dude, I really love this whole concept. Before we really get into the book and all the creators in your Kickstarter, I want to know, where did you first fall in love with comic books? When did that happen?
It was totally living in Winslow, in a small town where it's mainly an old people's home with maybe one
town?
playground for kids. It's shocking. I used to work in a newsagent's, a little corner store, right, during my teenage years, and there was always at least a gaggle of octogenarians and really fucking old guys who'd come in and get like 1.5 liters of vodka on a Sunday or something like that. They were just
that sounds like a
everywhere.
good time. That's a Sunday fun day for me.
I mean, that if you want to retire and get yourself way out of your head, that's the town to do it in. But for young guys, there was cool to do. So it was either go and bury porn mags in the woods out by the disused train station, or sort of start using your imagination. And that's just what came into it. Reading the old 80s Spider-Man runs and a whole bunch of Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes stuff as well, and just making up my own shit, designing platform games, writing stories. We did some kind of weird sci-fi radio show with my next door neighbor on an old sort of twin tape deck, just making shit up to pass the time, make life more interesting.
Cool. Anthony, comment?
I was going to ask, the next thing that on the list of questions would be, what were some of your main influences to get into writing comics?
Well, you draw also, right? The art is yours in the first that first preview story.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
I love how I ask a question and Imran immediately follows up with another question before you can answer.
Well, it flows really nicely. You can tell guys have been at it for a while.
Yeah, for a while.
Yeah, it's certainly smoother than I am. Influences, it's from all over the place, man. Definitely those early sort of 3-panel strips had a massive effect. We also didn't have a whole bunch of money growing up, and there wasn't a great, access to media and stuff out there in a small town. So those sort of VHS video collections of old cartoons that have fallen out of copyright that get bandied about. So I watched a load of old Max Fleischer Supermans. Yeah. There was a whole hour tape of old Betty Boop and Felix the Cat cartoons. So, when Roger Rabbit came out in the cinemas, actually, I was blown away by that sort of thing. And all that has had an influence, and it's probably why Tulsa Bear has such a sort of 1940s bent, It looks a lot like that platform game they're developing at the moment. Was it Cuphead? That's all sort of 1920s old jazz soundtrack. Again, Fleischer influenced animation style.
It definitely has a very Who Framed Roger Rabbit. You can see the seeds of inspiration from that movie to this, because that was kind of the same thing where you got to hang out in this crazy toy. Well, it was a cartoon world as opposed to a toy world.
Yeah. The lines are sort of blurred between cartoon and toy in that world, just because I liked to mix up some of those elements in it. But it does allow for kind of the franchise stuff. And what we're currently running throughout the third book, or planning to, is a whole big pastiche on 80s to 90s toy cartoon tie-ins, the whole...
Yeah, that's awesome.
Turtles and He-Man sort of shit.
Oh, there's a boatload of material there.
There is, and you could go on and on. You literally could, So we had to edit ourselves quite heavily, especially to avoid getting sued as well.
Yeah.
How we haven't been sued, I think, is just because we're indie and no one knows who we are yet.
Yeah.
So if we ever broke through, I'm fully prepared.
You're going to be giving up some change.
Oh, yeah. Probably.
Hasbro and Mattel, if they ever get wind of this.
I'm fucked, basically. Yeah. Michael Bay will be coming for me. Make me clean his car.
It's parody. It's protected. Who are some of your artistic drawing artist influences?
Because I started out in horror comics, I was very much influenced by Giga, Junito, definitely James O'Barr, which you don't get really any of in this latest run of books at all. It's definitely back to type, to childhood, to those early sort of cartoon influences. I like a bunch of guys. There's Kiacha Miroskia, I think his name is at the moment. He does a bunch of sort of art for a band called The Sugar, who I'm very much in love with at the moment. But it's kind of, they're deeply layered Photoshop files with about 4,000 layers, and it's organic and it's kind of algorithmic at the same time. So that's amazing. I'd love to do something like that. I've got an idea for a future project where there's a group of people who basically are the garbage people of space-time anomalies. So they go in to clean up, weird spatial shit and stick in the back of their truck. And I'd love to get some of that weird, repeating, glitchy artwork in there.
They're time janitors.
Yeah, they're like time janitors. So they're called the No Men. They're effectively immortal because they're outside the space-time continuum. So the time waits for the No Men. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's like the Time Masters in Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah. Except they clean up shit with mops and special.
Oh, they're literally cleaning
buckets.
it up.
Yeah.
We got some time puke, aisle 3.
Yeah. Basically, they've got that attitude. They're going around. Who the hell left this Escher stuff here? Going in to clean somebody's apartment, and the stairwell goes on forever and start going back on itself and stuff. So it needs a bit of development.
The lead character in Torso Bear is Ruxpy Bear.
Yeah.
Very. This is clearly a parody of Teddy Ruxpin.
Oh yeah, massively. The audience is totally split between those people who remember that and people who go, where the hell did this thing with a tape deck come into it? And I was like,
Anthony,
Google it. Yeah.
Do you remember Teddy Ruxpin at all, Anthony?
Imran acts like I'm 14 years old.
You are.
Jesus Christ. Yes, I remember Teddy Ruxpin.
What was it?
It was a fucking talking teddy bear, you dumbass.
It was fucked up. That's what it was.
Yeah, it was a weird ass teddy bear that they parodied off of the movie that I asked about earlier, Ted.
Well, see, but if there wasn't Ted, I don't know if that Ted's really going to help, people remember Teddy Ruxpin. But I remember that thing. I kind of wanted it. I never got one, but it also scared the crap out of me.
It did. It's like the Furbies. There's a definite uncanny valley thing going on there where it's pretending to be human, but it basically isn't. It's like Chucky, but with, eyelashes and shit.
Dead, soulless eyes, and he's answering
softer
questions. Yeah. It's a lot softer.
You'd assume. I don't know. I've never given Chucky a stroke. Okay, that sounded way less. In my head.
Nice.
Chucky will bite it right off. He didn't give a fuck.
Chucky gives 0 fucks.
And so I also love his buddy, the wooden cop, goes by the name of Hasbro with a Z, which is really great. I love that name.
Well, we figured if we were going to go after these, old brands and do parody, why not really bait the guys as well? Get as close as possible without, because Ruxby's wife is called Mittel,
Mittel, that's great.
Yeah.
So there's you got 3 volumes of this, and I noticed there's multiple. It's like an anthology. There's multiple writers and artists.
Yeah,
volume.
totally. Well, that started out just basically because I'd done Kuzumu was my first sci-fi horror sort of graphic novel. But yeah, after that, after the birth of my daughter, we were of the mind that I couldn't spend, hours and hours and hours every night sitting there colouring and drawing and stuff like that. It was just out of practicality in the beginning, and because a lot of people I knew in the indie scene internationally were involved with projects like Fubar, the zombie war comic anthology. It seemed like a good way to get a lot of material together without having to produce a whole book myself, which I wouldn't have had the time to.
But you were still, so are they all connecting stories, or everyone gets to do like a little self-contained story?
A few people get to do self-contained stuff. There is always a certain amount of guidance around the rules of how the world's supposed to work. And that's where me and Glenn especially have been sort of instrumental in keeping people, okay, this is a cool idea, but you've got to do certain things like this, like the way to kill a toy is to kind of like behead it, the other parts like arms and legs can be replaced, or, how would you go about executing a toy on death row to a certain extent. And so we always have those sort of, top end discussions.
Philosophical conversations for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
there is some weird shit when you read back some of your Facebook messages and go, if someone else was reading this, I would be locked up, man. Definitely.
It's so clever though, because I love in that preview issue, he shows up and the crime scene, the piano runs out and pukes. It's like Law and Order, except it's like green army toys and shoestrings. And then at first, when he came upon the crime scene, I was like, what is that? I didn't quite know. It's raining lemonade. And I kept looking at it. I was like, oh, it's the fucking torso of a bear, and the arms and legs and head is ripped off. The stuffing's falling off. And Ruxby is a stitchologist. So it's the study of stitching. And he's like, she was disassembled with a B-12 stitch picker, an illegal weapon around here. What are some of the rules in Toyberg? I love this world. Like, I love what you created. It's so cool.
Well, all that shit was just sort of like, as you said, Law and Order. It was a complete play for play of like, how would toys do that, kind of procedural stuff. But, you can't have any blood or gore. It's got to be stuff that you'd come across when fixing a toy, or, what would be the most terrible thing that could happen to toys. I mean, we've had them stitched inside out. I mean, there are some messed up pictures you can find on Google of people who literally do sew toys inside out, or, disassemble them in odd ways. So that first torso thing was definitely a reference to the Black Dahlia. I was like, well, okay, that was out of that initial drunken session. And going, do you know what? Fuck you guys. You think I can't do children's stories? I'm definitely going to get a really gruesome murder. Yeah, fuck it. We're going to do the Black Dahlia with toys. They laughed at the time. They weren't laughing when they saw that panel.
It's brilliant though.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's the one at cons and shows where we leave the book open, so people wandering up go, "The fuck is that?" and then pick it up. Yeah, I think out of the comics career so far, that's probably the turning point where I went from possibly mediocre to kind of like putting something out there that people might gravitate towards and sort of go, "What the hell is that?"
And when did you start? When did Torso Bear first see print?
It was at the end of 2014, because Otra had just been a digital-only anthology at that point. So all that anybody had ever seen of it was PDF stuff.
This preview really hooked me. I love the way you end it, too, because he goes to the crime scene, and then he's going to talk to his kid, and he's sweating, and he's all like, he's losing his innocence. And then he get a phone call about where the pieces are, and I really wanted to know what happened. Like, I was like, oh, why is it over now? I want to know what this murder is.
Well, that was actually a function of the of Otra, because the issue it was supposed to be involved with was hopelessness. So the idea was, to take something as saccharine and happy and completely pure as possible and take it down into a total pit. I actually got an email from an ex-cop somewhere in the States. I can't remember whether it was Atlanta or something like that, but he said he'd read it, and he was just coming out of the force, and he was kind of worried that people on the outside world weren't going to get what people were going through out there. Now, I've never been a policeman. I don't know anybody who is, but it just seemed to luckily hit a note or kind of happen upon the right idea that it messes with your head. It's just bizarre he got that kind of feeling off of a teddy bear.
That's when you know.
That is actually, but that's when you know you've actually hit the.
You're on the right path.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had like some really crap convention shows where you sell maybe like 1 or 2 books, despite people picking it up and stuff like that. Not to know whether my sales skills quite aren't up to scratch or whether it's just an awful lot of people. There are a lot of small shows kind of opening up in the UK in local towns and stuff. So whether it's just people that, bringing their kids in for a day out and not with an intention of buying anything, I don't know. But,
how do you, what's your pitch when you go to these things?
Yeah, what's the pitch?
Do you sit behind the desk, or are you out there like trying to pitch the book?
Oh, I'm definitely out there trying to pitch the book. I mean, we've had some great shows where, sold, many, many tens of copies of it, and it kind of goes up and down from almost nothing. I always equate it to, I hear about bands who have made it big but were playing to clubs a year ago for like 2 people or something.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to hit it, sometimes you're not, kind of thing. But the main point of going into that was, at those moments where you go, oh, what the fuck am I still carrying on with this for? You get an odd email like that where reading to it has made a difference to somebody, and I think that's what propels it more than anything else is people's reactions and creator reactions as well, because guys like Cy Death and the artist Renzo Rodriguez have just come back, and are fully up for doing it.
That's fantastic, and they seem to be having fun with it. But yeah, what is the pitch? Like someone walks up to your table and they're like, "Hey, what's this all about?" What do you tell them to get them hooked?
I'd actually tell them that kind of like Toy Story True Detective line.
Okay,
It's the challenge is like how gritty can you take noir, that detective story stuff, without any of the sex, violence, or gore, and still make it sick as you can possibly imagine. It's Who Framed Roger Rabbit on steroids and probably ketamine.
Yeah. It does. It's weird. It has this feeling of like gravitas and realism to it, even in that preview where you just buy it. Like, I don't even think you need, it kind of sells itself once you pick up the book and flip through it. There's another image I loved, and I found it online. It's the all stitched up image. I'll put it in the show notes, listener. It's a black background, and there's like a smiling teddy bear mouth and nose with pointed teeth, and then just a finger saying shush, but he's got a thimble with a hook on it. And this image is so compelling. Like, you already know just by looking, this is a bad guy.
Oh yeah, that's Ruxby's nemesis that turns up in Volume 2.
Who is this guy?
Had some subtle influence. Well, he is the copycat.
The copycat.
So again, he's like Felix the cat, but completely malevolent, like aware that he's an imaginary thing, and that it leads him to believe that because he's a nihilist, like he knows that this is an imaginary world.
Ooh.
None of this is real. There's no real consequence to him doing whatever the hell he likes to other toys.
He kind of sounds like the Joker.
I was just going to say that. He's
that was the
Ruxby's
pitch
Joker.
to the other writers originally for Volume 2 is that this is Toyberg's Joker. So, however you want to use him, just make sure you use him like that. He's working out quite how toys work, or kind of what the stretches of morality and the reality of Toyberg is. Not that he gives a single shit either way. He's just curious.
That's awesome. He's just anarchy and a wild card. So he's a teddy bear also?
No, he's a stuffed cat.
Oh, he's a stuffed cat. Okay,
yeah.
Stuffed cat.
So is it with kind of the Cheshire Cat influence on there, that he's got a permanent grin ever since he was in the Toy World's corner prison and got put in their version of solitary confinement, The Step. And it kind of drove him bonkers, or, gave him an insight into what the world actually is. Nobody quite knows.
So in volume 2, Ruxby goes to toy prison. What's that like in this world?
It's pretty messed up. It is pretty messed up. Most of the villains from the Saturday morning wars that happened before New Toyburg's founding got stuck in there. Most of the guards are sort of the good guys. The He-Man and the Brave Star and those sorts of guys are acting as warden and prison guards for the place. It's sort of subterranean, but it's built in a clown playhouse, sort of stuck out in the corner of Toy World. In a literal corner, you can see skirting boards.
Like they're all in a room. Yeah, I love how the streets are made of like game boards and puzzle pieces.
Yeah. Well, the kind of the vague pitch to writers was, and artists as well, is that you can do pretty much whatever you like, but make sure that it has a physical counterpart. Like if you were going to see it in a kid's room or something, you know.
I see. Okay.
So it's like they're alive, but there's still very much everything has to follow the rules of an actual physical toy. It's why Carlos Zamudio, who's been working on all 3 issues now, an amazing artist, he actually came up with the concept of the stars and the moon at night coming down on strings like a kid's mobile above a crib or something, you know. And there are tons of little touches like that who have just embellished the world.
I see this panel now on, I did a little Google search for Torso Bear of the clown prison in the corner of the room with the stars hanging on the wall. And there's like a springy hand as barbed wire running around it. It's so great. So do you give your collaborators, do they have a chance to create characters within this world for you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the more popular characters from Volume 1 was British writer Cy Deathan's Snaplock, who's kind of like an ex-He-Man minor villain turned PI, you know, like he's trying to clear his name and just keep himself out of trouble, but with interchangeable jaw and arm parts, you know, accessories sold separately, that sort of shit. He's been massively influential on the direction of the series, making it from a short story into this, and he kind of set the tone with that. I think out of all of them, probably Snaplock and Glenn Moore Stretcho Savage, who's kind of like a macho man, Randy Savage, Stretch Armstrong.
Yeah, nice
the strongest characters throughout the series that people have just made up and have their own arcs and stuff.
I mean, this is credit to you that you build such a solid world and universe that people can just jump in and add to it and have fun. It's a great sandbox that you got to play in right now.
I think it's a great sandbox for everyone to play in. I mean, this latest volume, you won't have seen it yet, but Kieran Squires, who's done a few bits on the stories throughout. The first story he did was the kind of knockoff Darth Vader toy called Star Knight in the first book. And in this one, he actually gets 26 pages broken down into 5 or 6 page chunks about the Saturday morning wars and Adam and the men of might and versus the Transformer like toys.
That's awesome.
Go on throughout, and there's a whole huge arc to that thing, but he's been allowed to just come up with the history. I mean, we've had a few conversations back and forth, but he's gone away and done a whole history for the thing, you know, based off of his passion for these old toys. I think allowing a lot of people a lot of freedom has just allowed them to create some amazing stuff that I couldn't possibly have thought of. And I think that's added to the richness.
How many other writers have gotten involved with you?
We've, just thinking about the numbers throughout the series, we're probably exceeding 35 plus people throughout the 3 books by now.
This thing has got a life. It's going to grow a life of its own. Like
now, are you like Kevin Feige, where you're like, all right, I'm the final say. I have the final say on this shared universe of Torso Bear. So like, I want to like at least see everything that comes out before it comes out.
Oh yeah, definitely. Glenn and I've kind of been more on the conceptual side of things, whereas Glenn is part of Comics Experience and he's a paid up member of quite a few little writing associations, so he knows how to make this shit work, how to make it fly and the structure consistent and edit properly, whereas I've been more of a sort of a creative control end. It definitely wouldn't have worked at all without Glenn, but we do have to see everything and vet a few. We have gone to a couple of 6th and 7th version scripts with a couple of things. One of which was John Scriven's Action Gal. But that was primarily because we were doing a trans Action Man story. And so to resolve the ending of that, which you really want to tread carefully and not kind of like do anybody any disservice or kind of like misrepresent anybody. So we really had to sort of hammer back and forth about the ending of that and how to get it to work, or at least how to leave it hanging so it didn't seem overly negative or positive either way. It was up to the reader,
For a book about toys, you guys handle a lot of like social issues, like in the real world. It's so clever, from, prison to crime to injustice to gendered. How does that, where did that start? Was that the point of this from the beginning?
No, it was totally a joke. And I think the last few years, some stupid shit has been happening in the world of politics, in the world in general. And I guess you kind of write what you know. A lot of people have been coming back wanting to do these more intense stories, particularly as we wanted to go and up the intensity. Where do you go from that first story, or carry through that notion of justice and what a crime is, generally, to make that rich, and make it a justifiable world, even if it is a joke one. How do you do that except without kind of expanding the notion of what a crime is beyond guys stealing stuff or punching a dude,
I mean, the potential for social commentary, the more I think about this, is incredible. Like, you can spin off different things and tackle subjects that in a different way and bring a different light than people are used to right now.
In a almost a kind of like a higher level. It's not overt.
Yeah,
it's through toys.
Yeah,
it's through.
Exactly. I think it's like Sesame Street, right? You teach kids the big stuff by showing them in a little way, and I think that's how. It could come off as really immensely fucking preachy if you did it in any kind of properly serious, Alan Moore-esque kind of way. But because you're kind of going about it as a joke, with this third volume, we've got riots and police crowd control and union busting happening, but that's all with bobbleheads and
that's great.
Little pink elephant tanks with sort of like Nerf water tanks on the back. It's we go about it in a silly way, and I think that's kind of a lot of satire. There's a lot of satire in the world at the moment. And I'm not entirely sure it always helps going as serious as you can. If you present things in a softer way, and get a joyful connection out of it, it's a lot easier to be positive about these things instead of incredibly fucking dour, because there's enough of that in the world.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes it gives you opportunity to step back and kind of laugh at some of these things that you're like, look, this is not that big of a deal. And you're showing it with toys and have people realize, maybe we should
Although
relax.
It does occur to me sometimes it is a little bit like, okay, show me where he touched you on this.
That's every panel. That would be every panel if I drew the book. Wait, God. Real quick side tangent. Alan Moore recently just came out and said, I'm retiring from comics.
I am Jack's complete lack of surprise.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Should he have retired a long time ago or too soon? Or you're not even surprised, so he hasn't really been doing much lately.
I think the last couple of books he's put out, have always been good. I don't think he would put out anything that he didn't think had a certain level of quality. That's just how the guy operates. And I totally get that. Tom Strong was possibly one of the best superhero comics latter days, and that was some time ago. And for Moore, actually, that was a fairly original property. Just thinking about how he complained about other people taking his stuff.
He complains about everything he's done.
Everything he's done has been based off of some kind of prior material, so he didn't seem like he had legs to stand on at all.
He's pretty bitter.
Yeah. He comes across that way. He comes off like that, definitely. I think with Alan Moore, ever since From Hell, where it's a massive, dense work, I'm like, why are you just doing a Warren Ellis and actually writing novels. That's obviously what you want to do, yeah?
Yeah.
Stop kidding yourself and just get out of it. It's kind of like your gay friend who you know has been gay for a while, and you're like, just
come out. Come on.
just
Nobody
come
cares.
out. Start living your life. Yeah. And
Nobody gives a fuck anymore. Yes.
I couldn't be happy. If I was Alan Moore's dad right now, I'd be going, where's your boyfriend? It's like, just write some more proper fucking books. Stop bitching about everything. Get happy. If he's in a happier place, maybe he'll cheer up. I cannot wait for him unveiling his next novel with maybe a crack of a smile on his face.
Well, I mean, that's what he said is he's going to do one last League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. But he's like, look, I've done everything I can do in comics. I'm going to try movies and books and something else. Yeah. And the mark he's left is undeniable from, Swamp Thing to your Watchmen to your Batman.
Speaking of Alan Moore, this is kind of a side tangent, but have you seen his adaptation of The Killing Joke?
The movie?
Animated?
I can... Yeah, I did see it, and I can kind of...
What did you think about it?
Right, okay, I'm going to start this with another slight side tangent.
Oh my God, we're 3 tangents in right now. You realize that? That's okay. Keep going.
That's a dream within a dream within a dream.
We just inception.
The fourth wall break, yeah.
We inception
walls,
this bitch.
Right?
Yeah.
I think the Watchmen movie, despite people's complaints of it being too faithful panel-to-panel adaptation, worked. All right, it worked a lot better than a lot of Zack Snyder's latest movies, which we could go on about. We'll sort of leave that as read. Particularly because in Moore's original book, the fucking squid thing, and suddenly in a world without superpowered people, except for the one guy, suddenly had psychically sensitive people. It really did feel like someone trying to write themselves out of a corner.
In the book, yeah, okay.
In the movie. The subterfuge is all based around making everyone think Manhattan did it, and that just was far more elegant for me, and I can totally get why they did that.
I agree that the squid comes out of nowhere at the end of Watchmen.
Yeah, and it really did. And, Alan Moore's not immune to, any critics or critique you could give of his work. But I honestly think... what was the original point again? I kind of went off at the tangent.
Killing Joke. Did you like Killing Joke?
Yeah. Have you seen Killing Joke?
Now that the reason I said that despite the complaints of a panel-to-panel execution, I felt that the Killing Joke's latter half was too much of a rote execution almost. I mean, Hamill aside, always a joy, right? Kim and Conroy couldn't be better, right? I think they could have actually, because it felt like they'd obviously come up with a new stuff to lead in up to the halfway point.
Right.
But they felt like 2 very distinct stories.
Absolutely.
Like it was it was really odd. Like they stitched 2 different episodes of the old animated series together that should be vaguely related, but not really.
What are your thoughts on the fact that first story, which is very different than the second story, does nothing, in fact, kind of weakens Barbara Gordon's character even more?
I'm not sure either way that Barbara is weakened, or I can certainly see the complaints for that, and I get behind it. Moreover, what it does for me is actually it reduces the shock value. So she'd just been Barbara Gordon to begin with, and we'd assumed, or they'd had an aside where she used to be Batgirl, and that's fine. Giving her any sense of strength reduces if anything, it makes you somewhat infuriated that she couldn't defend herself.
Yeah.
In that moment, like she could have taken down the Joker at any point during that. She was far more than capable of doing it. Whereas if all we'd seen of her up until that point was just a human person who maybe once had been a hero, but doesn't have the aptitude, or you haven't seen that she has the aptitude for that, she would have been more of a victim and certainly more overpowered psychologically and physically by the Joker and his goons. That would have had more shock for me.
Imran, see, this guy actually writes things.
He gets it.
He gets it. This guy gets it. He respects the biz.
No, I that's such a great point, because in that book, the real point is she is Jim Gordon's daughter. Like, she's not even Barbara Gordon. She's Jim Gordon's daughter, and that's where the torture...
She's somebody's little girl, right?
Yes.
She's somebody's family that gets mowed down. She's not a superhero who it's in the line of duty, right? And it's almost to be expected. No, it's a shock that the Joker would go after somebody who is, all intents and purposes, and to his mind, is just a girl that he messes with and then completely ruins her life. That's totally the worst thing he does. Now, in this version, she's just a casualty of war, almost.
Yeah. I agree. I think the actual adaptation portion of it kind of fell flat. And then afterwards, I was like, why did they even adapt this? Like, it doesn't work as well as it does on the page. It seemed unnecessary. Yeah.
It's like everything, a lot of companies buy up. I often think that, Warner Brothers buying up DC and Vertigo is mainly for having kind of like a development department that can occasionally make you money.
Well, I mean, they've even said, you're right, because there was another article about from the producers of Arrow talking about the Suicide Squad, and they finally just admitted, like last week, they're like, yes, the Suicide Squad on Arrow was a test for the movie the whole time. And comic books are also becoming testing grounds for the movie. Now, The Killing Joke made a couple million in, its 2 days theatrical release. So they're like, yeah, let's adapt everything. Let's keep it going. Iconic storylines. I don't know.
And that's the problem with bottom line creativity. I mean, you think about, I wrote an article about this for Down the Tubes, which is an English blog comic site. I made some complaint about, Diamond being ever more closed off to kind of new avenues or new creators or new publishers coming in. But the upshot basically is that all these tentpole franchises, we're talking about movies and comics and games and everything else, came out of an era of experimentation where people didn't fully know what they were doing.
Yeah.
They were just trying some shit. So as many success stories as they are with characters from the 60s through to 80s era, they were all people trying shit. And there's a load of stuff, dead universes left on the cutting room floor of publications that either worked or didn't. And that open approach to creativity is lost.
It's gone.
All these franchises. It's happening in the indie scene.
Yes.
But the big houses are all running with the same characters they've had since Batman's been going 75 years. Now I love Batman, but I don't know how long you can you run a character for hundreds of years that continues to come back
why
and
not?
reset to zero every time there's a major event. How many number ones can you do?
Oh, fucking every month. They're just
all of them. You can do them all. You can do them all, and you can do them all over and over and over.
And nobody, and over, and then just set it back, and then reset it back, and retcon the retcon.
I don't know how many people bitch about that stuff, or how many people still love it. Mainly because I tried reading, the Batman regulars for a while, but then I obviously had to get back into writing and sort of left out of touch with it. For you guys and regular comics readers, are you satisfied with Batman as it is, or because every time they seem to do an event or a retcon, there's a bunch of stuff online about
Anthony,
it.
you take it.
I am not satisfied because I don't buy comic books anymore. So I started up with Imran in 2011. For our listeners, they've probably heard this. I've started up in 2011 buying comic books weekly when the New 52 came out. And as of probably early this year, I canceled all my subscriptions. So I don't buy anything anymore.
My pull list is down to a few things a month.
And Imran used to buy maybe double, triple the amount of books I was buying. He used to spend like 60
40
bucks
to
a week.
60 bucks a week. And
now he buys maybe one or two books.
So, what is that down to for you guys, do you think? I know that makes me sound like I'm interviewing you, but I'm trying to...
No, that's fine.
This is a conversation. This isn't an interview.
Rebirth has been doing good for DC. They've sold 12 million, but I still feel burned from New 52 because I was all in with these number ones now, and Marvel's doing it again. It's kind of the constant restructuring to bring things in line with the movies. Marvel again this fall is going to renumber and reboot a bunch of things, and then Rebirth just did it. And it's kind of rubbing me the wrong way. Like, I don't feel any connection to it anymore.
Oh, that's interesting. When I'm thinking about the people making these films, like James Gunn or any of the Marvel guys, they've got this deep, decades worth of lore. Books that were deep into their several hundreds run. And obviously the fear from people selling this stuff is, how do you get people to jump on at that point? Yeah. But forgetting that people were obviously always jumping on. during these long-running series, either catching up or just filling in the blanks for themselves as they go. It's this fear, this tie to that sort of bottom line. We've got to make sure this shit sells because we know it sells, but we've got to kind of make as doubly sure of that as possible.
Yeah, it's making it as easily accessible in their minds as possible.
Yeah, exactly. But it kind of misses the point, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's unnecessary. This
deep structure of storylines, and not that there haven't been retcons in the past, but just these huge character histories that have been running since forever, as long as the medium has been popular.
I also think they're trying to follow almost like a TV sort of format where this is a season with this writer, and then there's a little break, and then it's like, here's a new season. It's sort of like, hey, here's where you can start. There's always these neat starting points.
You wouldn't necessarily do that in anything else. You wouldn't do that for music or video games. So I think that a movie format would work for comics. It's really weird.
Spider-Gwen, I think, had like 3 or 4 number 1 issues just last year alone, and I kind of appreciate how they've taken Action Comics and Detective Comics and set them back to their original numbering, meaning we will get an issue 1000 of Action Comics. That to me is cool. Now you're right, they never needed a jumping on point. It's a little overwhelming to walk in the comic book store and these books are at 400, 500, but the whole fun is jumping in and going back and buying the back issues and filling in the holes in the storylines. And now you can't even do that. Nobody sells goddamn back issues. All the back issue stores are closed.
I will say, though, there is a point where, yes, there's a balance. There's history and like, oh, wow, this is the 700th issue. Yeah. That's huge. Yeah. But there is a balance. And they wouldn't have done this if they didn't study it and realize that there's a lot of fans that come into a comic book store and go, shit, this is on 800 issues, 700, 400, whatever the number is. Do you think that person's really going to go back and buy?
No, and you're right. They, with Rebirth, really proved the point. Like, if you could do this right.
And that's why all these, when you do these number ones, you mentioned how the numbers and how they've sold. That's why these comics do that. They look and they go, wow, you make a number 1, people are buying that shit, eating that shit up. Now, how often can they go to that? Well, we'll see. It might be diminishing, but the sales prove it.
But they won't take a risk at a new character number 1, which would be, maybe valuable down the line. They're just number 1ing all their main titles like every year, or it seems. I don't know.
Well, an interesting thought occurs to me in that, this is going to sound like a weird kind of jumped or a point of comparison. But every genre or medium or type of something has a period, or it seems to have a period in which it's popular and it's burgeoning, and there becomes sort of a historical block, like this thing happened. What I'm going to talk about vaguely is kind of classical music. For hundreds of years. I mean, no one notably, apart from maybe a couple of movie score producers like Michael Kamen or those kinds of guys, are making popular classical music these days, not like they used to. And the form is pretty much set. There's not much anything new or revolutionary that anyone's doing with it. So I'm wondering if the medium of comics that we're looking at and graphic storytelling has kind of reached its saturation point where it's settled into the form it's going to be now.
That is
from where it was. Kind of like a life cycle, You're born, you do a lot of development, and then you kind of settle into yourself as an adult.
Well,
kind of
it might be the case.
Yeah.
That's actually a very good point. I think that this might be the trend for the next 5-10 years, and then it'll move on to a different trend or a different form or a different medium. What are your thoughts? Speaking of settling into adulthood, what are your thoughts on comics eventually just fully transitioning to digital, or is there always going to be a place for the hard copy comic?
I think for as long as there are people who grew up with the physical medium, there'll be people who want stuff in print. And because, there's a good many million people of it, I don't think the sales are going to suffer anywhere near as much. When you look at DC's numbers of just the stupid hundreds of millions they've managed to sell in graphic novel and collected trades.
Yeah, the trades do a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, those are adult buyers. I don't think there is as the guy said himself, perhaps rightly or wrongly, we make books for 40-year-olds. They know their market.
Do you think in this binge-watching, consuming society, do you think the single issue will ever go away and they'll just put out like a trade every 6 months of here's the first 6 issues instead of putting it out monthly?
Well, even my local comic book store, Dead Universe Comics, manages to, if you look at the amount of real estate in their shop, the amount of space given to singles, and long boxes of old collectors stuff versus the sheer number of shonen manga stuff and graphic novel collections, it does seem there's a whole huge kind of just thinking about how the shop was about 5 years ago, it would have been mostly singles.
So that's
and now
reduced.
It's way more on trades and graphics and associated merchandise. I mean, there's a bunch more bobbleheads and stuff.
Yeah, you got to diversify now to be
pop and stuff like that than they used to be.
And I also think the binge watching culture is definitely a big part of that. But also, Imran again brought up how collecting all the old issues. Why do we have to do that anymore? Why would I do that?
With Marvel Unlimited, you can go and digitally read all those.
Well, I'm not only saying that, but they do trades. Yeah. And trades just seem like a more efficient way of doing things. Like, why would I want to have to go to like 8 different stores to find
individual issues?
The individual issues.
That is not as fun anymore. It's lost the allure of the collecting. I mean, Brett, even in our store, Pastime Comics, where we go to buy comics, the majority of the store is Magic the Gathering board games, and then way in the back is like 2 racks of where the comics are.
Not only that, it's 2 racks of copies, and then the guy that runs the store, Eric, or runs the comic portion, he has full collections of all the back issues, like for like a single storyline in one bag. So he's done all the collecting for you.
Yeah. He's got runs. They're kind of these bundles, which are kind of cool. But
which is cool. He's done the collecting for
They make their money not off comic books. They make their money off the games and the cards and running Magic tournaments.
That's exactly it. I mean, when I was recording this latest Kickstarter video in that store that I was talking about, the amount of guys that we had to stop filming for that were going to buy books versus those guys who were picking up packs of not just Magic, but Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon sets was just way, way larger than the actual, book buying crowd. So it's a specialist store for, gamers.
The landscape definitely, it's changed. Yeah.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hey, listen, isn't this fucking shit awesome? Would it be great if someone actually liked it enough to actually maybe support us? How about that, Imran? Did you ever think about that for 1 second?
Well, look, listener, if you like what you're hearing so far, we do have a way for you to support us.
And how the fuck do they do that?
Go on to jockandnerd.com/Patreon, or you can go on to patreon.com/jockandnerd, which is our virtual tip jar.
It works both ways. Listeners, support us for any amount. You're going to get access to awesome bonus content. Ruggs has got mini episodes, instant reactions to movies, more geeky audio than you can shake a geek stick at.
Or a geek's dick at.
Oh, boy.
Oh, shit.
So go on to patreon.com/jockandnerd and donate today.
Do you like superheroes? Do you like comics? Do you like film? Do you like comics and films about superheroes? Well, then you're in luck, because we here at A Place to Hang Your Cape have everything for you. We've got reviews. We've got interviews. We've got list articles. We've even got a few videos coming up. Anything you could possibly want that's relating to superheroes, we have A Place to Hang Your Cape, where superheroes go to hang their cape. The name is self-explanatory, really. I don't know why I have to explain it, but there you go. Find it at ap2hyc.com.
The H stands for H.
The H.
Hey there, fellow podcast fans. Do you love comic books, and especially Swamp Thing? Get out of the bayou. So do we. Come check out the Parlapod Show, the world's only podcast dedicated to the muck-encrusted mockery of a man himself, Swamp Thing. This is some serious arcane audio. as we chat with comic book professionals, reviews, spoofs, talk about back issues. Everything swampy under the sun happens here. Give us a listen at parlapod.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, Podomatic, our YouTube channel, and we're on every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern on podcastradionetwork.net. Join your hosts, Dave and John, parlapod.com. Let's go into the green. We'll see you in the swamps.
So this is a great segue to talk about your Kickstarter and actually being an independent producing content. You know, like we've talked, the studios are looking at nothing but franchise films. Mainstream comics are kind of growing stale. And, you know, as time goes on, we're going to see a lot more independent content. So you are like, you're the publisher, the creator, the writer, everything, right? You're putting this out all on your own.
I definitely have to for the first 2 books. Yeah.
And you kickstarted both of those.
Yeah. And the third one's about halfway funded at the moment. We are kind of going to be changing up tack a little bit just to take some of the pressure off, but also to reach a wider audience. We've been talking to Travis from Source Point Press in the States, who I think are going to be picking up the Ash and the Evil versus the Evil Dead book, and Run Holliston, which I think is a TV adaptation at the moment, as well as a bunch of other stuff. You know,
yeah, they're really great at independent stuff. We talked to a dude, David C. Hayes, who he created The Rot, and the Source Point Press is putting out The Rot.
The Rotten Up the River as well, drawn by Stephen Sharrar, who's, you know, an amazing artist. So they've got a great team together. They've got a great, you know, independently sourced collection of retailers that they work with. And it seemed like for an independent guy who's tried it, Diamond, and not gotten through.
Fuck Diamond.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much what we wrote. Me and Guy, John, who runs Down the Tubes, were basically like, you know, these guys are just sort of fucking.
It's a monopoly. It's bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like all monopolies, though, it kind of reduces. I mean, even Hastings, you know, has just fucking died on its arse recently.
Is that another, like, is that like a British Diamond? Hastings?
I'm not sure. Is it Hastings, or what was the big chain store in the States? Am I misremembering the name?
Barnes and Nobles or Borders? You mean bookstores?
They mainly did comics, graphic novels. I can research into it later. But, you know.
I didn't know there was one.
I didn't know there was like a chain comic book store.
That's probably why they fucking closed down then.
That's probably why.
Was not working.
But yeah, working to still be independent. But, you know, putting it all out yourself is cool. But it is kind of everything that you do that is not related to the creating of the book detracts from creating the book, if you follow me.
Yeah, that's the only problem. But this is one of the ways you can get your work out there. So tell us a little bit about this Kickstarter you got running right now.
Well, so Torso Bear 3 has been up a week. We're up to about 46%. And we've just done, you know, we've been talking to all kinds of media people. So I've been on the local papers, been up to the local, you know, BBC radio stations and TV interviews. It's all been organised and stuff like that. And really going out to make sure that this third and final Ruxby story, you know, really gets done, hits its mark. I mean, even applied for Arts Council, you know, government-based funding to help pay some of the artistic team. Because
right on.
Just paying people in exposure is bullshit.
Yeah.
It is bullshit.
Yeah. Wow, so you're actually paying all your collaborators like page rates and stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've got an agreed page rate. So a couple of people have negotiated slightly upwards because since the first book, they've gone on to do more work for people like Zenoscope and stuff like that. And that is completely understandable. If you want quality people to be worked with, then you've got to treat them right.
Yeah.
You've got to treat them right. We had a bit of a hiccup with that in Volume 2 in that we couldn't pay everybody, but trying to at least pay them in copies of the book to sell.
And they could keep
that was
all
a
that
hiccup.
money.
That was a hiccup on my part. I fully hold my hands up and say I kind of fucked up the second Kickstarter the first time round by looking at the higher, you know, totals that people were able to go for and think that I would be able to reach that amount based on my audience from the previous
You know, this is what I wanted to know. The psychology of Kickstarter is very fascinating to me. This is your third Kickstarter, third volume of Torso Bear. what have you learned in the 3 times you have done this, and what mistakes, do you know not to make now? Because we have a lot of listeners who are creators who run Kickstarters. I think this would be very valuable information for them.
I think if any of them have run more than one, they'll probably know this, in that make sure you've got enough put aside to pay Kickstarter, their 10% sort of cut that they take as fees, because that's how they make their money. That's how they run a business. So that's understandable. But also for postage as well, because if you're getting any kind of international backers at all, and you've got to send something to like Australia or Norway, it's going to cost you. So
so work in the 10% and the cost of the mailing in your number.
You really have got to, because that's the one that's going to kill you more than anything.
It's all the hidden things that you don't initially think about.
Exactly. So
you got to plan for it.
What we were discussing amongst a few of us is there ought to be at least some kind of advisory resource where people can go and ask people with some of the experience in it, or at least written up some documents with vague parameters and guidelines as to kind of, right, well, no one's going to tell you about this shit. Because we love the indie scene, because we love independent books and the kind of creativity and madness that comes out with, you've got to at least kind of, pay mind to this stuff so you don't screw backers and stuff yourself out of being able to do further books.
Wow, that's great. That's great information right there, right here. No one's going to tell you. You just told everybody.
Exclusive to Jock and Nerd.
Right on. So,
Mr. Uren.
I'm going to give it to you real, guys. I'm going to give it to you real. Yeah.
That's all we expect. We want the real. Don't sugarcoat that shit. I know Imran likes to sugarcoat that shit. Look at his blood type right now. Look at his fucking diabetic.
Sugar.
But everybody else, do not sugarcoat that shit for us.
Wait,
it's the mailing more than print. If you're aiming on paying guys for it, for their work, make sure you kind of check up on their work history as well. Because there's a couple of guys I hired that skipped out after getting the money, not produced the work, and then found that there's been kind of like a trail of stuff, books with 5 people in the title because one of them partially completed and then pissed off halfway through. So it's you got to do your research, you got to do your due diligence. So take the time before you launch to make sure you've got all your angles covered, because they'll bite you if you don't. And also, don't get carried away. You might have done one successfully, but that doesn't mean you can necessarily ask for more the second time through. That's the mistake I made with Torso 2.
So have you been asking for more each Kickstarter?
No. I mean, the first one we were asking for like 5,500. 6,000.
Okay.
British pounds.
Pounds?
Yeah, pounds. And so we got that. And that was cool. That was really cool. And we had a couple of, guys who were seriously into investing. And so put in a decent, large amount of that. And possibly a little bit sort of swollen by that. I went in to almost double that up.
Oh, wow.
For the second Kickstarter. But just doing some rough amount of research.
Yeah.
Into the amounts people were asking for comics on the site and thinking I'd get away with that. Not looking at the statistics or how statistically asking beyond, an 8,000-9,000 amount is statistically way less likely to get funded. And that's just what happened. It bottomed out until I relaunched at a lower rate.
It seems like unless you're huge and you have a huge built-in audience, you would be more successful asking for lower. So Volume 3 Kickstarter here, with 20 days to go, and American money, you've raised $2,135 of your $4,587 goal, which seems a lot more reasonable.
Yeah.
Seems like a good pace.
Way more balanced than it was. Way more balanced. But, that's how you get into it. I mean, there's a guy I know called John Locke who's running a book about the afterlife being run as a business, Afterlife Inc. He's on his 4th volume for Kickstarter now, and that's being, that's funding quite, nicely ticking along. So he's
look at your long hair, Brett. I'm just looking at your Kickstarter now. Look at this long hair.
Metal.
Wow, that's a great head of hair.
He's so metal.
Are you wearing that in a ponytail right now?
I am, and the hairline has moved since that picture was taken a couple of years ago, which I put down entirely to this book and my toddler as well. So
what you need to do is a classic look. You keep the long hair, you keep it in a ponytail, and the hairline just keeps moving back.
Yeah,
It's still a long-haired
I look
ponytail.
like a fucking radish from Super Mario 2 or something.
You look like that, or you'll look like Hulk Hogan.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
hairline all the way back to the back of your head, still
I'm
hair
still
down the shoulder.
saving
Like,
my hair.
Fat brunette Hulk Hogan. Yeah.
yeah, that. And do you have the
attractive.
goatee going too? Still,
Oh yeah. Well, that
go
is-
stash, dude. Shave the goatee. Go
That
stash.
is the
Stash.
hair equivalent of of smoke and fucking mirrors, my friend. Because most of that beard I've been growing for 7 years. Can I get a full
No.
to get it fully round the jaw? No, I fucking can't. It grows
Never.
in that
It
area.
just grows
And
like
I've had
that.
to put it,
I
I've had to put it
sympathize with
right
you.
back in the neck, almost to my Adam's apple, to get it to have enough depth when you look at it head on. You saw that shit from the side? Yeah, it's mist. It's brown mist, mate.
Listen, Anthony is half Filipino and can barely grow one facial hair. He's just smooth everywhere.
I'm smooth everywhere.
Smooth like a Ken doll.
Everywhere. Do you eat? Everywhere, bro. Everywhere. But no, I'm sorry I derailed it again. But I just looked. I was like, holy
at his
shit! This
hair.
guy's long fucking hair. Look at his
I was in
hair.
A bunch of metal and noise bands during the late 90s through the
I see
that makes
it.
sense.
So,
That
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
You play guitar?
Guitar. I did a demo once.
Clarinet.
Cracked some drums and shit like that. You know,
He plays metal oboe.
Pick up anything.
He's got the metal triangle.
Metal triangle. He plays.
Is this a good pace though? You're at? I mean, it looks like you're almost halfway there. 20 days to go.
Yeah. I mean, it feels good this time round. I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of that is returning, business, but we're picking up new people all the time. We're trying some different shit like Facebook ads and stuff, which has got some limited success, but I'm not sure it's paying itself back exactly.
Well, so my next question was promoting the Kickstarter this third time. How do you get people to take action? Like, you can post this shit all day long. What is the strategy to run the page and the updates to get people to actually click that button?
Yeah, I learned very quickly on the first one and talking to other people throughout the second that people will get sick of your shit being constant.
Right?
Understandably, right? Or people will just fucking turn off from it. They will. So you got to make it more interactive. That's what we do. So it's a toy-based book, right? So why not play some games? So we came up with a way that, backers, one is picked randomly out of a given day to win a daily sketch from one of us.
Oh, fun.
Or we come up with games like where you get to pick what happens in the story, say, or even building characters. We're running a little game on the Kickstarter and the Facebook page for Torso Bear at the moment called Build-A-Bear, where we basically give you, one day we'll give you a series of 4 heads, right? Like a merman, a Barbie, an action doll, and a Transformer head, A, B, C,
Yeah.
D. You vote which one, and out of the comments, whoever gets the most votes, we pick that head and then proceed to bodies, arms, legs, and then a character has been built like that and isn't actually in a story in the second book during one of the prison scenes. And it looks weird as fuck. But luckily, because the book is weird as fuck, it kind of works. So we're running Build-A-Bear again this time. Kieran Squire's Saturday Morning Wars from the beginning, the inception. One of his great ideas, building on that Build-A-Bear thing, was actually to write a couple of scenes that could go either way, and then base the outcome, who gets to survive by the end of the story, based on a public vote. So we've done the first of those votes, and getting people to interact with that, and people see on their social feeds that interacting and commenting on this stuff has attracted a few more backers.
Yes.
And that's something you can do for relatively no money,
Yeah.
but just a kind of like a creative way to kind of get people on side, or at least talking to you about it. And it's the same with, I'm not sure how many cons you guys have done or sold books at, but getting stuff into people's hands is half the battle.
Yeah.
As soon as you can get people interacting with it, like actually physically there with your book, flipping through the pages,
Holding it,
or at least being involved, is what it helps people personalize it for themselves.
It seems like to me, and we've talked to other people that have tried to put out independent books, but it's still the best way to get these out there and get people to read it is the grassroots, going out to cons, going out to stores, getting face-to-face stuff, because you can throw it on digital and you can throw it on the internet and have a great synopsis, but unless you have that personal connection to the writer or that person actually pitching it to you, it seems like you're like screaming into the void.
Yeah, and you're just doing a sales pitch, and every fucker's doing a sales pitch.
Right.
Everyone's doing marketing, right? So if you're selling it based on anything, you're quite right. It's going to be on your personality. People buy people. I'm not much of a sales guy. I'm not a salesman, but that's what I've learned through going to and doing shows, one every month or every other month for the last couple of years, and watching these guys who are really fucking good at selling, and people are buying how energetic and how chatty they are and how personable they are, and almost the book doesn't fucking matter. But it
exactly,
helps if you've got a cool book, and definitely, but it's more them.
But you could also have the best book and just sit there and not talk and get no traction. You're right. Somebody like that could sell. You kind of have to be a used car salesman, which sucks because it's sleazy. But
I think most creative, comics artists, a lot of them are not that way inclined. It's a weird mixture.
They're very introverted and, just like to do their art. I got to tell you, though, your Kickstarter campaign ideas from the Build-A-Bear to the Daily Sketch, it's so smart because if you just scroll through the Torso Bear Facebook page, you don't get the feeling you are getting harassed to back something, but each one is part of the campaign. Is every link goes back to the Kickstarter, but it doesn't feel like you're selling. You're just having fun, and you can interact and
that
get
felt
stuff
true
in
to
there.
the spirit of the book, isn't it? It's just a laugh. Everyone's here to have a bit of fun, to play. It's about play. Why not get everybody to fucking play? I personally think that more marketing and a lot more social media marketing is like that, actually, that you're getting people to kind of play. Everyone's remembering the value of it. You're supposed to be, or at least in the last generation, if you're being an adult, you had to be so fucking serious about it. And I think that's what people don't get. I hate the label millennials, but people get,
Imran loves it.
I hate millennials.
It's fucking bullshit. Every generation is kind of like a few people from each year are born.
Will ruin it.
There's no line. There's no line. And there's no line determining when you're an adult. Exactly.
That's true.
There's certain biological shit, but psychologically, you only have to look at our politicians and celebrities sometimes and realize that this is playground shit, right? People are still the same, self-absorbed, sometimes conceited or stupid or kind of like, misdirected people they were when they were like 4 or some shit. They've just gotten more complicated or have gotten more kind of tools to kind of get around and get what they want. So no one really grows up, right? Knowing that as soon as you get an opportunity, and I'm sure that's why creators have come back on board, because you can do as many superhero books as you like, you can do as many kind of serious noir thriller, but you give the opportunity to somebody to play again, and everyone's on it. Everybody knows how to do that because it's embedded in you from the very start. You know how to do that shit, and more people should. That's why coloring books are so.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah,
those things are making a fucking comeback. Like you wouldn't believe the adult coloring books.
I saw a book at a train station. It was called Extreme Coloring, and I was like, "The fuck is in that?" I've got to have a flick through this thing. What is extreme?
Yeah, was it skateboarders and snowboarders? What the fuck's in there?
Let me tell you, I've had friends that have recommended it to me, and I've been not skeptical. I've just been lazy, didn't participate. But they're like, when you do the fucking coloring with like no one around, you're in such peace.
It's therapeutic.
And it's very therapeutic. It's very relaxing. It's very the creative juices start flowing again.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's flow. And I think that's what a lot of people miss in our culture is that you can do the same shit that made you happy when you were a kid. Because it's the same shit that's going to always make you happy. You don't need a car. You don't need all this big stuff you're told that you need. You just need half an hour, a book, some pencils, and that can bring you far more peace than having a Lamborghini can have.
It's analog. It's old school.
Let me ask you something, Mr. Uren.
Yeah.
Is there what's your mindset? I mean, it can be, and it doesn't necessarily need to be an either or. But is it creativity? You're naturally born as a creative person, or do you think creativity is kind of stamped out through the educational system that we have and through the social system?
See, now that's an interesting question because I've kind of come up against it depends on your personality to a certain extent. And that, I think, without going into a huge diatribe about the educational system, one size fits all doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
Because it leaves people by the wayside and people don't fit into that kind of realm. It's like clothing. If you speak to women for long enough, you'll tell them that a size 14 in a store is not a fucking size 14 to them if they wear it from somewhere else. Because one size fits all isn't for everybody's shape, right? Same thing with education. Right. Now, both my wife and my father were artistic and still are to a certain extent. My father's going to be doing some hand lettering for this third volume.
Oh, cool.
So he's always, and he was a huge influence on me because he used to draw a shitload when I was younger. And he always wanted to go to art school and his dad was going to pay for it, my grandfather, and crapped out on him on the last minute and gave him a whole spiel and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think genuinely, and maybe he's going to hear this and we haven't had this conversation, so it's going to maybe hit him hard. But we're in real talk mode now. And
that's right.
Dad, if you're listening, you know, I fully feel you because a shitload of stuff like that has happened to other people where you're
Dad Uren, if you're
Dad
listening,
Uren.
why the fuck are you listening?
Thanks for listening.
But thanks.
Yeah. Basically, if you're artistically inclined, you can be sensitive. So getting a knockback or feeling like either your family or society doesn't value that in you, it breaks some people. It breaks them out of wanting to do that, even though it's an aptitude they always feel in themselves. Now, I personally have had knockbacks like that. My parents rescued me from something like that, where they were trying to get me to stop drawing in sort of primary to middle school when I was younger. And thank fuck for that, because I think they would have broken me out of it as well. And for such a society that demands innovations and creations and creativity, it seems completely counter fucking intuitive to me.
Well, good for them that they encouraged you, because I can completely relate to that. I'm also an artist, and I come from like a Pakistani immigrant family where you tell people I want to be an artist and they just fucking laugh at you because you're supposed to go to like medical school or be an engineer because I'm fucking Paki. But the same way, my dad, my cousins on my father's side, they all had art talent. They would draw all the time, but none of them did anything with it. And I was like, you guys, we've been given this. We've been giving this gift. Clearly, I was born with a talent. I'm going to use it. I'm going to be the first in the family. They were all really good, just natural artists, and they just thought, they consider it a hobby. You can't make money that way. This is not serious. My mom still to this day.
That's the fucking problem.
Yeah.
If you base everything on your ability, if you all you wanted to do as a human culture, right, was to make fucking money, the bottom line, everyone would be traders. Or something like that. But you don't. You have people who are architects, who are aeronautics people who love to fucking cut hair, garden, make food and shit. Nothing is just down to money, right? You can make money doing what you do, but you should do what you love first. And people do love doing things. That's why the world is so richly diverse, full of activities and different kinds of people. And you're talking about your own culture, you know. If you look at any, from India to Southeast Asia to anywhere around the world, even though there might now be a focus on what's your job, what can you get are you going to be a dentist, a lawyer, that sort of shit. They have a rich cultural history of beautiful artworks and architecture and all this sort of shit. A foundation for a culture, right?
Yeah.
Even we do in the West, even though it might have been employed for building fucking churches or whatever at one point, or the abbeys and cathedrals, there's still beautiful, creative fucking things. It's the basis of everything we are.
I was just going to say that creativity is kind of the basis of evolution, of how we evolved. You think of cave paintings. They had to figure out some way to communicate, and they're drawing things on the wall, and they're still there.
Yeah, and so the creativity is the foundation of everything we are, right? And bizarrely, I'm going to pull that back to the Kickstarter for a second.
Good.
Because it's all predicated on the point that you've got to fucking think of something, right? You're either bored or people at each other's necks, or you're trying to achieve something and you don't quite know how to get people on board with your ideas. You have to do it on the fly. So if you're in a company and your boss is talking to you and they've got a certain idea, to an extent, if you've been alive long enough, that they're kind of bullshitting and they're making it up as they go along. But you go along with it, Same thing with the Kickstarter campaign, is that Build-A-Bear and all that shit was just us making shit up on the fly because something wasn't working and you've got to quickly come up with some stupid idea to try to see if it makes something work. And that's it. I don't think I'm lifting the veil on the curtain or going to stop people interacting by saying that.
No, but I think
come up with things spur of the moment.
People don't think about that, and it's important. You're right. That same with this podcast. Sometimes we're like, look, it's all digital. Let's just try something different. And that's the beauty of this platform on Kickstarter is it gives you a little playground to try different things. And usually those different things is what sets apart the successful Kickstarters from the other ones. And I also think you got to be realistic in your rewards and, like you said, what you're going to give, what you're offering, because that kills people also.
It does. I mean, it's a strange mixture, much like life is, between, coming up with these amazing ideas and then having to either pare them back or adapt them for how reality actually is, I'm sure that, anybody who invents anything is going, I've got this amazing idea. Oh, but shit, I've got to make it work in the real world. It's just how it goes. With Kickstarter, it's interesting because I know quite a few people now who, they might still go to bricks and mortar stores, right? But are doing an awful lot of comics shopping, like month to month, because I'm following a bunch of my Facebook friends. You can see them backing shit. Like every day, there's a few notifications from people doing shopping. It's a pre-order system. It's definitely kind of like a diamond alternative these days to a certain extent for people.
I could definitely see that. I could definitely see shopping on Kickstarter as being a thing.
Like a little indie distributor.
It's another online store.
Yeah,
it totally is. That's the beauty of it, though. Kind of like how YouTube used to be, less so these days, is a burgeoning place where people can make a small cottage industry for themselves, doing something that's particular to them. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. I mean, it might be a little bit now with the introduction of people like Archie doing Kickstarters, and we mentioned big names before, sort of pushing the little guy out, but that's to be expected when you've got a big medium or a platform for something that's doing well and is kind of new and fresh and exciting. The bigger guys or medium guys are going to want to try that stuff, particularly on video games.
There's room for both. Yeah, video games, but also like one of my favorite hip-hop bands is De La Soul, and they just released a new album, which it was completely, they put it out themselves. They got off of Tommy Boy Records, completely kickstarted, fan funded. And it's awesome because the album is called The Anonymous Nobody, which is a direct reference to all their backers being these kind of anonymous nobodies that have created this art. And then, you get to be part of the book or the album. Your name goes in the liner notes. It goes in the back of the book. I love this new market. And I think there's room for the independent comics because, like you said, they're going to promote each other. You're going to shop for this one thing. Like on your page at the bottom, we have John Locke's Afterlife Inc. Volume 4. And there's 2 other comic books that look really cool. And the discovery is great on Kickstarter for these things.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't think of a better way to do this sort of stuff, in that you build not only a business for yourself, but you're part of a community. It almost feels like being part of an art movement sometimes.
Yeah.
In that you kind of like get to be some part of something bigger than yourself, which I think a lot of people look for anyway. But from people like John Locke to Mike Garley, who does an amazing comic, The Kill Screen,
I've heard about that
computer
one.
virus that infects real life people and turns it into a sort of real world death match. I mean, he's on Patreon now, and that's another area that I previously considered. I don't know whether after Torso Bear I'd still remain in print with a next project or try giving something digital. Patreon. Yeah, it's how are you guys finding it?
Yeah, it's good. We consider it. We're trying to sell it as like a exclusive fan club. Where our show is free, but, like back in the day, you would sign up for fan clubs and they'd mail you like little cards and certificates. It's the same thing. You pledge, you're part of the fan club. You can ask us questions on like a lockdown feed. And then we have tons of like hours of bonus audio on there for people.
I find it fascinating how these older ideas or some older concepts are getting updated for this new digital market as well. Like you said, it's a fan club thing, which would have been in the back of comics.
Yeah,
years ago, but is now completely unencumbered. You're completely running it independent of any publication or any other medium where you'd have to be fighting necessarily on someone else's page space for attention.
Right. I mean, nothing you create is ever really new. It's always been done before. This is just an evolved version of what you just mentioned.
Yeah, it's evolution, isn't it? And I think, just going back to a kind of career thing, I thought I was reinventing the wheel when I was a young, dumb, full of cum guy. And I'm sure pretty much every teen in his early 20s guy thinks they're fucking doing that.
Yeah.
But, you learn a few things, you go on. But it is all evolution. It's all new. Torso Bear is not... It's not a new fucking concept. It's a remix. It's trying a slightly different tack on some existing stuff and trying to revitalize some stuff that either old guys remember or young people may not have been aware of before and might be interesting to them. It's always tough trying to carve out a niche for yourself and find something truly new or at least a unique spin on something.
Will there be more Torso Bear, do you think, after Volume 3?
Well, this is the point that I've discussed with a couple of people, creators-wise, that people, like we were saying, people always have really fucking cool ideas. But the point of entry for me was always Ruxby, right? Yeah. And he's running, we have a finale planned for him that's like nothing that we've done before. And I don't know if anyone's going to be able to top that out or, kind of like follow it. Not from an arrogant point of view, just from a kind of like we've taken the concept of the world to the furthest point to breaking it that I think we can. And where do you go from there? But there's been a bunch of street level crime stories that have been really good, that just didn't fit in with any particular volume that we would love to run at some point.
Yeah.
There's a team of people who just want to do a music themed one shot in the Song Bear Bar in Playstoria, sort of more of a jazz love story kind of thing. Someone else is going, the Kieran, who's done the first, Saturday Morning Wars run in this latest book, has said he's got a ton more ideas for stories, and people are pitching stuff in all the time. So
this thing has a life of its own now. Spin-offs, spin-offs.
Well, this is it. It starts to feel to me like it's its own, not to say that the work's in the same realm, but like Fables, in that you can have a main storyline, but then you can filter off into different areas afterwards. So I'm going to talk to the guys from Source Point and see what they think about it. But we have been discussing, even if it was still me independently kickstarting, we were thinking of spin-off one-shots or other little single books or mini series, but that other people would do, but I would just have some editorial control over.
That's great. This world is so rich that you created. It's kind of like how I wish the Matrix would have went and done more stories in the world of the Matrix that had nothing to do with Neo. Like there was that anthology movie that had different stories that took place in the Matrix. I
actually enjoyed more of those and the Animatrix and stuff like that.
Yeah, the Animatrix
way more
was
than
so
the
cool.
Second and third movies.
Oh my God, that is way better than the fucking sequels. Because those two movies came out and I was like, you guys just fucking blew the whole thing. Like, what happened to the Matrix? Like, I don't care about this.
Yeah. The first movie, right, was its own encapsulated thing and ended perfectly. Yeah. It's only financial concerns from the studio and the desire to sell more that got those second movies made. It was perfect in its own thing. It didn't need to happen. The rest of it didn't need to happen. Having said that, though, things like the Animatrix were a wonderful accompaniment, and they're the best way to expand that world, because you can do the side stories, you can do all the little worlds and world building fill in without having to kind of sacrifice the original story in any way or diminish it. So, that's what we're going to try to do.
Listen, for the listener, you guys, you have to check out Torso Bear. It's really clever. There's a lot of great artists and writers on it. Check out the Kickstarter. Brett, I'm going to put all these links in the show notes, but why don't you tell the listener where they can find all this stuff and where they can find you if they want to say hi to you online?
You can hit us up where Torso Bear has its own Facebook page, and that's Torso Bear, all one word. Don't try and Google the two separate words, because that brings up a search that nobody is.
Oh, I'm going to do that right now.
Snake oil pork, and a bunch of other people I've been talking to on various podcasts have brought that stuff up. Don't do it. It's not good for your kids. So you go to torsobear.com. There's a bunch of links on there, not only to the Kickstarter, but some stores where you can pick up previous books if you want to, although that will be changing in the next, few weeks and so as I transition some stuff out for Source Point to start selling from there. Other than that, you can just search out my name, BRETTUREN, into Google, and there's a raft of me doing all the promo that I could possibly do and talking about my own shit like the most arrogant cunt on the face of the planet. Yeah.
There you go.
He said
he
it.
got that. What did he just say?
The first time we had to slip that in a little bit.
That's a Jock and Nerd first.
I thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the Academy.
For the listener, we had a little side bet, if you would like to call it, that he couldn't work that word in. And he said that I will not repeat. So you'll have to press the
30 seconds back,
15-second or
if you
30-second back
missed
button and catch it.
No, we could always repeat it, but I think it might diminish that slightly.
Yeah, no, that's
yeah. We'll leave it as it is. It's as perfect as it is.
Yeah, it was perfect.
It's like when you show the monster the first time, it's already diminished.
Exactly.
Well
it's like
placed.
It's a demagogue from Stranger Things. Just
Yes.
leave that shit until the end. Yeah.
Well placed. Listen, I got it, Brett. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Yeah, man.
I got to
for
thank
coming
David
on.
Molosky also for bugging us to get you on. It was definitely worth it. I love Torso Bear, and you're a lot like us, basically. You know, we're relating across the pond, and I want to turn people on
Long hair, just like us.
Torso Bear. Well, maybe not physically, but you know what I mean.
Hippies make it back in a really bizarre way. I mean, it's really great to talk to you guys too. And again, thanks to David, because he is fighting the good fight for
He really is,
UK
man.
and international indie scene, man. He's well into it. And it's people like that keep this sort of shit alive and going.
David's really carved out a great niche of the indie comics, and it's very exciting. Like I said, as mainstream comics get kind of stale and as more independent work is going to flood the market, because now you can just make your shit, put it out, see if people like it, keep it going. I wish you the best of luck. Torso Bear's awesome. I want to see him. He's going to be a worldwide franchise soon. There's going to be Torso Bear shit everywhere.
Only because of this show. If you didn't come on this show,
Oh, totally.
nothing would happen. No success
It
to you.
all started here, folks. This is where you heard
That's
it.
right.
Jock and Nerd.
That's right. Jock and Nerd. Thank you so much, Brett. And this was awesome. Thanks, man.
It's been
thanks for
good to
coming
talk
on.
to you guys too.
The Jock and Nerd Podcast.
Dude, we got to thank Brett again, and I have to apologize. I asked him how to say his name like 6 times, and I still end up saying Uren.
You're an unbelievable
Brett
motherfucker.
Uren.
Yeah.
I am an ass.
You are.
I'm a fake
You're the undercover asshole. Like,
undercover asshole. That should be a TV show, like after
That's
Undercover
you.
Boss. That'd be great.
That's you, dude. You are an asshole in sheep's clothing.
Every episode is a guy being nice, and at the end of it, you go, "Wait, that guy's really an asshole."
Yeah, exactly.
Shit.
That's you, dude. No, this guy was great.
He was awesome.
I enjoyed learning about Torso Bear, and I think his opinions on things are quite valid, and from a perspective of a real fucking writer,
Yeah.
they're interesting. Compared to me and you, I mean, Imran, you're a creative guy that gets really excited, and I'm just some idiot jock that's a millennial, doesn't know shit.
It's always good to have a
Has
writer on.
opinions. So it's fun to have someone that actually knows what he's talking about on something.
Very talented dude. I mean, more that he writes it and he draws it. And again, thanks to A Place to Hang Your Cape, David Molosky, for hooking us up and for carrying our show, listener. You can find this show on Weeby Geeks Network, A Place to Hang Your Cape, Tangent Bound Network, and on GeekLifeRadio.com every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Central. So Brett's show is going to be on all these platforms, and it's a great thing we have with A Place to Hang Your Cape for small timber. Keeping it
Definitely.
small. Listen, listener, that's it, man. All you got to do is check out our website, jockandnerd.com. Has all the links to subscribe, to contact, to buy merch, to support, join our fan club on Patreon, jockandnerd.com. That's the only URL you need to know.
Exactly. Check that out. Everything you need to know is on there. Review, store, Patreon, all there.
And if you like what you heard, we ask that you just share the show, tell a friend, post it on Facebook, post it on Twitter, run up to the next person you see, give them one of these.
Jock and Nerd.
And you will be our friends forever.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for listening. We appreciate every second you spend with us. This is the Jock and Nerd Podcast. My name is Imran.
My name is Anthony.
He's the Jock.
He's the nerd.
And we'll hear you next time.
Jock and Nerd.
Oh, here's the question. How do you pronounce your last name? I always
Well, everyone's had their own take.
Can I take a guess?
Yeah, by all means. Let's hear.
Let's go with Uren.
I don't think that's it.
It's fairly close. I've heard that one plenty of times. Let's put it like this. My dad and his brother used to get called the Piss Twins back in the 50s. So,
No. Well, that answers that question.
I say Uren.
Uren. Okay.
Yeah.
Uren.
It's a little more fancy way of saying urine.
Yeah,
Uren.
exactly. Well, there's a sitcom in Britain where there's a lady called Harriet Bucket, but she pronounces her surname Bouquet, darling, to get around that. Yeah.
It's like Dumas.
Yeah.
Where it's
like Colin Powell. Like, no, it's Colin. It's fucking Colin.
Colin Powell. I didn't even get that one. Colin.
It's fucking
I thought
Colin.
It would have been. It's Colin Powell. So Uren.
Yes.
It's not Uren. I really thought it was going to be Uren.
Do you know what? I've looked everywhere from Ancestry.com to all sorts of places trying to figure out how you say it, where it's from, and there's no one clear answer. It might even be Welsh, and there was like Urien and stuff, which sounds kind of cooler, you know. But
Wait, so say it again one more time.
Uren, Uren.
So like Y-O-U-R-E. Okay, Uren.
Yeah.
I don't know why he needed to say it a few times. It was fairly straight.
Because I'm gonna fucking I have already forgot what it was.
It's all right. You wouldn't be the first person.